아, 당도 검좀 거기 동아 타다를 죄제 내 산지 고본 토비게 토발이야 전주 잡아침배 전주 가소리 최 잡아침배 남기림베게다 롭종 제디 제네 산지 고본 토고래 대토반 사다델이야 냠는 제야들라 다군어 전주 셈기 군이라 되네 동방이 도베 셰랍돈의 파신 중에 냠는 진의 산지 고본 토고래 진짜 되네게 전주 셈비게 냠는 림바디 달 되네게 개침보 주여바디 안델야 된세 둔유고네마 손셰게 로조드님 마세디 디고랑도 잡아침비치 냠는 제단기 림바고 아니 슈고래 제네 되네 자당도 군로하 심제 탐제 대화 템바쇼 심제 동안을 잡아쇼 심제 되제 대화데 템바도 동안을 잡아데 녜지기 제장의 심제 탐지기도 산요고방 토버쇼 셈베게다 장쇼 셈 잠니지 장쇼 셈 되네 삼다 되네 자다 심제 탐지기도 산요고방 토버라 제시심에 줘봐 라보첼 라고고자 제시심에 줘봐 냠네림바 간시나 징게 장기 셈베게다 도스제네 안서 삼나다위 토네 안서 디고다 안서
Good morning. We'll be continuing, this will be our 9th session of looking at this remarkable concise text, the 7-point Mahayana mind training, in which in a very condensed manner, the key stages of training in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all beings are presented. So one first cultivates the preliminaries, sets the foundation, establishes the qualities of mind so that one can actually engage or develop the minds of the Mahayana. Because these foundational practices, those are what one just strengthens, builds upon in order to actually enter into the Mahayana. And the entry point into the Mahayana comes through the development of great compassion. And great compassion is generated after having generated self-compassion or compassion for oneself, in the sense of, I recognize the subtle levels of suffering that constantly befall me, and I understand their origin, and I have to gain freedom from this. But others, so that's one's self-compassion. Then one applies this to others, recognizing they, in the same way, for the same reasons, are suffering. And one generates great compassion towards all equally, and all equally, and with a strength of mind, a deep resolve of, I can do something about this. And one has this confidence because of one's prior training in the preliminaries. Then one develops this further, where one's strong wish, may all beings be free from suffering, is developed into, I take this as my personal responsibility. I don't leave it for others to take care of. I will ensure each and every single mother being gains freedom. So that's wholehearted resolve. Then one develops that and one step further into bodhicitta with it, which is, but in order to do so, I have to become a Buddha so that I can guide them to that state. One generates bodhicitta. And this is the entry point into the Mahayana training. When one conjoins that with the wisdom realizing emptiness, these are the two wings of the bird, the two indispensable qualities that are required to attain one's goal and be of great benefit to others.
대화 그 라다 신 심제 탐제 어느 코비 레다 뇨모 원게 진짜 동안 용어도 디네자 심제 탐제 라나신 대화 되바도 동안 미도 지바레 제자 딘다 심제 탐제 대화대 템버 쇼 세베게다 네 잠바 코미야다 심제 탐제 동안 자와 쇼 세베 니제 코미야 심제 탐제 대화대 템바 동안 자와 니 지긴 세베스 대 하삼 곰제 디네게 심제 탐제 산유고 토버 쇼 세베 전주 셈 니 만절에 냠는 제야데 곰바에 곰야게 배주 제야데다 조디 계시셔데 디차데 거래 니 언제 냠내 약부 총바이나 가산經驗 장주 남도 주수디게 약부 총 투레 다 괜찮데 제사디 먼저 곰바디 니 잠니제다 장주심 하삼디게 곰바 다 템부시 매바이나 그도들 양아 저기經驗 최연데 장주 남도 주투야데 되스칼레 하보레 제사 디네자 잠니제 장주 셈다 안토니요 따위 땡지게 남자디게 파도신 삼다 되스 데네게 곰바게 가제 곰바 숙체 예바이나야 다 강한데 체도 데네 그 지게 장주 남도 주투야데 레라지 용거래 용거로다.
So advice for us as beginners is to start with where we are, recognizing that I'm a beginner, I'm not yet a bodhisattva, I therefore need to engage in the trainings of a bodhisattva. So what I suggest is that you place your emphasis on both the preliminary and the main practice. In particular, you engage in both sets of preliminaries, and when you recognizing that the suffering that you experience, and very clearly the origin of the suffering, one's contaminated karma, and in particular the afflictions, giving rise to a wish to gain freedom of that. These steps, which are the preliminaries, emphasize that, and then take that as well as one of the main steps, that of bodhicitta, and develop this wish, just like I want to be free of suffering, so too do others. May they be free of suffering, the mind of compassion. May they abide in lasting happiness, the minds of love, and cultivate these within you. And then you can briefly develop the wholehearted resolve and the mind of bodhicitta. But for now, those are going to be more intellectual than emotional, than arising in a sincere way. But that's okay for now. So go through these stages with the emphasis on the preliminaries, and then expand the preliminaries into the cultivation of bodhicitta. And within there, if there's some reflection on emptiness, depending on your learning, that's okay. But the main emphasis should be on those preliminaries, and then on strengthening them into love and compassion. The kindness of others, love and compassion. That's where the main emphasis is, and a little bit onto bodhicitta afterwards, and a little bit onto emptiness if you have that learning. Because, and I say this as personal advice for everyone here, because perhaps from yesterday's teachings to transforming adversity into the path, this is drawing you very strongly. I'd like to have an easier life. My life is difficult. So one can be drawn to that, attracted to that. But without those prior trainings having been well developed, it is very difficult to transform adversity into the path. Being able to transform adversity into the path is a result of having cultivated a strong habituation to the prior trainings. So therefore, place your emphasis on those prior trainings.
And ya go ma tene za di moyon ge chap de la khar che wor se na and ne ne chu ge ra na ne na za da tene ka nga yu ka bla sam da de da de so ngan ju ke wa nga ma le se bi je bu min go res je za da da mo ba ne tene ke chi ge ma yon a di yung go re de za da tene ge le du han yo ya ju nyo mo ba de ke de le pang go do a sam pe ge tene ge sam da de chi che da shen ju ge sem jen 수인의 간에 랑글라 녀바 체바이나 안델이야 안데지기 오다고 녀바 체야디 레다 녀모베 옹기 랑체세나 녀모 옹기도 수체바레 된자다 랑와민도 랑와요마 닝제세베 니제고미야 도시네 몬바이나 안 동화 당랭의 수업에 냠는다 안데지 녀발레 지만이베 동화 냠내 용고레스 안데네 자다 랑라 녀바 체인디게리아 오다디 배메 약부레스 게린 쳔보레스 갈리아 수업에 냠는 제 디솔레 때는 용고도 내가 자주 쌤 인지념면 제 되는 경우도 나 인지기야다随便념는 제 되는 알아 녀베지햄 인제속이 지게리 배 알이야 판도 첨부도 세배 삼단에 안내게 된 첨부금 되는 제 오레스 되는 제배나 바네 그래서 코르게야다 근데 라리아 쌤가 강아지 용 말에스 되네 자주람도 요고 그래서지 어두시로 항상
whilst you're training well in the preliminaries and expanding them into the mind of bodhicitta, you will be able to take what you are training in there and use it, as we saw in the third point, to transform adversity. It's not the transforming adversity isn't necessarily your focus, but independence on the development of the preliminaries and the mind of bodhicitta, you can use this to help you deal with life's challenges. So we saw there in the first subpoint in transforming adversity that problems come from the world and inhabitants. So if we think of world, such as illness in terms of our own body, or perhaps environmental issues, whatever it may be. Recognize this has all come about in dependence on karma and afflictions. Therefore, I must refrain from non-virtue and strive in virtue. So this sits very well with the preliminaries, true sufferings and true origins. And likewise, when others give you a hard time, so we had the world and its inhabitants, so when we're having issues with others, there you can use the training in the preliminaries to recognize that their mind is right now dominated by their afflictions. They are under the control of their afflictions. So this you will have recognized because of training in true suffering and true origins. Then, through having cultivated some love and compassion, so having expanded the preliminaries towards the mind of bodhicitta, when you recognize this being before you is acting or speaking in an unskillful and unkind way, is doing so with the suffering mind, the suffering afflicted mind, then compassion will naturally arise within you, enabling the patience of practice the practice of patience to have some impact. So this is definitely a way that you can train in transforming adversity. And one further point is when you are seeing some success in your practice of patience, acknowledge this, rejoice. And then in the same way, this person or this situation, the world and its inhabitants, look at it with eyes of appreciation. That through this person or this situation, you have the opportunity to practice patience. This will also help to alleviate any lingering negativity about an unpleasant encounter. But recognize that was an opportunity either to practice patience or that I was reminded of my need to continue to strive to cultivate patience within.
Trinam Gushi Gomba Tony Suala Namies Kasa, Tanga Tunga, Tunga, you condition made Chasa, Tanga Lotrulia, Navi, Wonke, Nansam Chimato, Guchi, Rangi, when droop to Vachika, Yomare, Samji, Dushin, some died. Chesa Rang when you drew a Marsan, Tide Gushi, when some Gongore said, Chesa Tunga, Tunga, you, Yomachasa Rangi. Lo chua la nang zam ma do rang ngwen ni drup du ge ngwen ni jie wa yo ma de rang ngwen ni drup du be ga ba yo ma de che sa da rang ngwen ni drup che ne ba de ne ba de yo ma de che sa da rang ngwen ni drup be jie wa dan ga ba de ne ba ga me ba de sum ga da rang ngwen ni ma du ba dong sang yi ba wo ji ba de se be du chen de sam dang ko me de la na ka sang du chen de sam dang ko ngo re se ji du chen de xu ro da.
The fourth point that we looked at, the fourth and final point we looked at yesterday, was that if one has some good learning in the nature of reality, then remind yourself that whatever appears to your mind is like an illusion, in that it appears to exist truly. It appears to exist, it seems to exist in the way that it appears. But I know from having done meditations on emptiness, it does not exist in this way. Every single thought I have, every single thing I think about, does not exist in the way that it appears. So this then is how to utilize by meditating on illusory appearances. And then as the four kayas, there it has the two meanings, one of which is that through my understanding of emptiness, when I become a bodhisattva, these two, wisdom realizing emptiness and bodhicitta conjoined, will lead to the attainment of Buddhahood. And the second way to understand the four kayas is that all phenomena are completely empty of inherent existence. In any aspect of that phenomenon, it is empty of inherent existence. The phenomenon that is arising, that process is empty of inherent existence, as is its abiding, and two, well, its ceasing, or its ceasing. All three of these aspects are empty of inherent existence. They do not exist in the way they appear. So this then is a subtler way of thinking about whatever it is that appears to you. That in this process of it coming into existence, abiding in existence, and then ceasing, this phenomenon does not exist in any of these processes by way of its own nature, nor do any of these processes function by way of their own nature or inherently. So now, continuing, so that in the same third of the 7 points of mind training, transforming adversity into the path to enlightenment, we come to the fifth. The best of methods is possessing the 4 practices.
That Joa Shidan Tabi Shaw said the Joa Shidi Karesene, So Sabi Joa, Diva Janwigi, and Joa, and Den La, and the Jige Chibiki Joa said, Tene Chugon, the Chibi Joa said, Joa Shidi Sungore.
So, what are these 4 practices? So, the first is the accumulation of merit, the second, purification of negativities. The third is offering tormas to spirits, and the fourth is making offerings to Dharma protectors. So again, accumulation of merit, purification of negativities, offering tormas to spirits, making offerings to Dharma protectors.
That Sosabi Joa said, Nireda Manzuke, Jamdro Semke, Jamdro Che, Semke, Dene, Gunwan Jamdro Semke, Dushe, Dene, Sosrange, then Checha Sewa, Kora. Lama Cheva Pua, Manje Pua, and Ejige, Denigi, and Sosugi, Gawasa had the Chasada, Sosa Joa said, Sosa Joa said, Denigene, and Dushia were said.
Accumulation of merit refers to both the generation of virtuous minds, such as refuge, bodhicitta, and so forth, as well as activity undertaken under the influence of those virtuous minds. For example, making offerings, circumambulation, and so forth. These lead to the accumulation of merit.
Tiki de tempo kuina, tiki de tempo de la mi, Jing la process Adam, and then Chikianjik Jinghalia, Gangaji Kuguyabena, the Lamik Yanga, Gangaji, Lami Jing la process, or Ducian and Hajele, Ducian Lamalia, Chiki Sosa Tripsian said, Sosa said, and Zucangele, Gao together, Deliada, Sosa Vanale, Jimbe Yamle Yungure, Sudim Yamle Yungure, Zavocomia, the Chasa Yunguru, the Sosa Nala, Sosunum Soyadele, that Denigi, and the Jamni Jocomia, the she got to go to Shubanaji, don't let Yamle Jet Yungurua.
Again, accumulation of merit has these 2 components. One is the mental component. And so this is the generation of a virtuous mind, such as the mind of refuge, the mind of bodhicitta. And that alone, the generation of virtuous mind, is included in the accumulation of merit. So the second component is optional, that is what one says or does under the influence of that virtuous mind. So one may generate refuge and bodhicitta and then engage in prostrations or circumambulation or make offerings to the Lama, to one's yiram, to the 3 jewels. So these are all acts that lead to the accumulation of merit. And one can, again, in terms of one's practice, one can make offerings to one's Lama and thereby request blessings. Blessings meaning inspiration, requesting inspiration in one's practice. And this process of accumulation of merit really refers to virtuous minds and what one potentially does under their influence. So, therefore, virtuous minds means it's very broad. It includes the 6 practices of generosity, ethics, patience, joyous perseverance, concentration and wisdom. It also includes minds such as love, compassion, and wisdom. Includes the meditation we saw on our first day, that of taking and giving. So all of this is included. All of these virtuous minds are included in the accumulation of merit.
디바 장비기 좋아세들이 다 디바 제 좋아세는 안주기 디바디 님보도 쉬고네 샤야들이 진짜 돕시 또 디죠 장위 돕 장위 돕셔야 돼 진짜 님보도 쉬고네 디바 자야들이.
So of the four practices, that was the first. Then the second is a purification of non-virtue, and that then refers to engaging in practice with the four opponent powers.
나디 님보 돕시디 나는 저기 나디로 땡이 돕세다 안 순지미 돕라 네발레 라도베 돕 대님비 돕세 돕시디 두차가는 미용도 돕시디 디레.
So these will be the four opponent powers you've heard before: the power of regret, the power of reliance, the power of the antidote, and the power of restraint.
지나당 디바 먼저 디바데 샤야라 님보 돕시고도 샤야나 당보 땡이 돕 다제사다 대신 하시 당도 겸로 건조সম나 접서되게 겸로 콜 동화 타달래 아니 지게 탈되게 삼바께 지나다 코위 동화 라나 셴심자티 코위 동화기 나르되셔도 동화들라 탈고도 선배게 텔레마타나 탑미도 세베 대 동화 딜레 껴베 뉴발 술로 요레스 겸니 건조সম들 요레스 지나다 겸조 건조섬 껴그래 선배게 이체베 이시 제 겸로게 되네 겸로게 세베치네 제자 다 메심자 탐제 냐와데 템바다 니 동화라 자와다 니 치기 디장에 심자데 동화라 자다 디기 두개의 체도 니다 산지 고마마토 탑미도 지장에 심자 탐지 산지 고바토 버쇼 셈비기다 셈게디다 두시네 겸로체 셈게디 니디 나도 롤레야 두스키 공부로와 디 공바데다 땡기 돕차고래.
So the power of reliance refers to what one relies on in order to engage in this process of purification. So there are two components, one being the mind of refuge or protecting refuge, and the second being the mind of bodhicitta. So in this opponent power, one generates first refuge through thinking. So this, just to say, this word refuge means protection. So a clearer translation is protecting refuge. So one, having reflected on suffering and its causes, how can I gain protection from suffering? By turning to the three jewels for protecting refuge, because the three jewels of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha and the community of Arya practitioners, they have the capacity to guide me to gain protection from suffering. This is the mind of refuge, where you turn to the three jewels, knowing that through relying on the three jewels, one can be guided to gain protection from suffering. So this is the generation of the mind of refuge or protecting refuge. The companion to that is, all beings require protection from suffering. All beings require guidance so that they can transform their minds, and thereby, through their mind being transformed, will no longer suffer. They'll be protected from suffering through transforming their minds. How can I do so? I must become a Buddha. And here we generate bodhicitta, the second of the two minds of reliance, or the two minds one relies on.
나들이야 점도들에 됐지 대시ገብ시나 야고도 근데 점도당은 저기 점도들라 점도ገብ수도 유들라 산용은 저기 쪼그레 점 건조송기 쪼그레 승해강아디 동아디 점는 건조 쪼그레 선비 이체어도 다 쪼근 유디 가래서는 산지 건조 추 건조 기둥 건조 숨디래 다디 쪼그레서 이체다나 가르치고 그래서는 산지 건조기 산지디기 다 되네게 동아 타야려야 람된디 마노와 지기리 선배다 될 람된 마노와데 지기리 선배 이체디래다 산지 건조이다 제산디 나 동할에 타야게 탑람 냠리 림바데 산지기 땡게디 마노와지 땡바데 용구레 디 냠는 제바나 동할에 땡네 다 투그레 이체디래.
We I think it's good to use this opportunity then to talk a little bit about refuge. So firstly, the objects of refuge, in other words, to whom one turns for protecting refuge, are three: the Buddha jewel, the Dharma jewel, and the Sangha jewel. The Buddha jewel refers to the founder teacher, the teacher of the Buddha Dharma, the being who brought into the world, into our lives, and thereby into our lives, the unmistaken path to enlightenment. So this is the first jewel, the Buddha jewel.
지진 고법에 되는 중에 삼다나지 가려서는 강아들의 겹거리에 선배기 이치제도 즉 소수기 냠는 체모네 건조랑기 즉 제기의 선배기 이치제도 겹거리에서 이치제로 제사당 누가 겹네 건조좀 겹거리에서 이치 제고에서 삼다에도 니나신 삼다나 디고 말해 따다 말해 아주 세상 안주 삼다에도 건조좀 겹거리에서 겹타디 삼다네 가서는 산지 건축 교구리에서 해야지 간스 교구리에 남나 산지 건축이 동안에 탈비게 남된 냠능이 림바된 뒷마나와 마수바 따다 땡기래 니된바이나 니된바들 소수기 냠는 제바이나 동안들 탈기에서 미시에들이 다디 산지 건축을 접수주에 겸로 세디 산지 건축 교구리에서 메게 다 삼는 이시 제단이 디래다.
Yeah, it's important because our culture, it's a culture where that's pervaded by the view of a creator God, and so whether one believes in a creator God or not, or certainly those who believe in a creator God, will turn to the creator God, believing that this God has the power to alleviate them from suffering. So they'll plead for their suffering to be removed, and if even those who do not have such a belief may turn to an external source for relief from suffering. Whereas the approach of a Buddhist is to turn to the Buddha jewel, turn to the Buddha, with the recognition that it's through relying on these incredible teachings, which are unmistaken, that I can transform my mind and thereby gain protection from suffering. The way to alleviate oneself from suffering is by following the guidance of perfected beings, transforming my own mind in dependence on their guidance, on their teachings.
네. 나 개념 고저기 교구에서 이체디 교구에서 선배 이체디 가르라나 다 개념 고저디 산지기 송셰비게 된 안주 냠는 제발라 기능 근처에 마신 발 셔버지고 로체 된지 로체가 만어와지 따다 로체제 소수게 로체 받대 냠는 제바 있나 다 둥아 타달라 다 투그레 선배게다 이시제들이 최근초대 시유래들 대신에 시유래시네 다뭐 기능 산유 근처에 되는 기능 근처에 되는 최근초 제래.
So that was the Buddha jewel. Then the Sangha jewel, these refer to the great practitioners amongst us who serve as our companions, our guides. They are the ones who guide us in an unmistaken way and are amongst us. So we should relate to them as our companions, our friends.
나 저기 건조 숨랍여도 될에 대선이 시고래. 건조 숨세다 데뷔 건조 숨 제산데 건조 숨라도 당한주 마 남든 지간 상계다 다 상계 좀 된데라서다 만주 유래야 만주 제고 말해 제산데 건조 숨세도 만주 녀려야 주차간 게 상계 건조 최건조 기둥 건조데 건조 숨세요 제산 상계 좀 된데 만주 남든 버버래 제산 건조 상계 건조 최고래 다데네 산지 호롱 줄로 투줄로 주기비 고테나 람덴디게 당한줄로 최고조 유최고조 세월 차고래 다 개는 고조다데 전주선바 파바다 년도에다 란제 파베 가사다데 유에디겐디게 만줄레 로스로 제전 유고조래 건주기 만줄이야 로봇제 람덴제 안산지 최대 당한줄이 냠는 지도 갑려야 아니 즉 파베 전주선바다 년도에 디네 파베 가사디기 만줄로 로봇제제 냠는 제주 바자 될야 아니 건조숨 경화들 판도타디 디레스 유건조선데
The refuge jewels can be presented in two ways, those which are causal and those which are resultant. To speak of the first, the causal refuge jewels. These are those of a separate continuum to us. So the causal Buddha jewel refers to Buddha Shakyamuni, in that, as Buddha Shakyamuni, the founder teacher. The Dharma jewel refers to the qualities of the Dharma that abide in his continuum. So again, a continuum separate of ours. And the Sangha jewel refer to those amongst us who are our companions, our guides. So they too are of a separate continuum to us. So these are the causal refuge jewels, those who we rely on as a cause for our spiritual development.
나 제비 건조 숨사데 제비 산지 건조 제비 최 건조 제비 기준 건조 사지요래 숨 제비 건조 건조세.
Then there are three resultant jewels. Again, it will be the resultant Dharma jewel, the resultant Buddha jewel, the resultant Dharma jewel, the resultant Sangha jewel.
다 제비 건조 숨라디 가르라네 소소기 산지기 되지 유 건조 산지 건조 남된 제샤바데 소소기 냠는 제제 소소기 모험바나 소소 안에 파베 강사 차야죠와 디 소소 냠는 제 모험바나 소소라니 파베 강사 차야디 기능 건조래 아니 데네기 모험바나 소소라는 냠는 파베 강사 차 데네랑 유기 뇨모바 사본나 제바 방배 곡된 토병도 곡된다 데네 남는 디게 제비 최고죠 아주 좋아하게 데네기 장주심기 소수게 데네기 냠는 제네 데네 장주심 냠는 데 소소라 모험바나 상계 차그로와 데 소소라나 모험바나 상계 체배 상계디다 제비 상유권 좋았어요 제상 소소라랑 게 냠는 다데 유권조 권조 상주 남된 제제바 디게 냠는 소소랑 냠는 제 소소랑냐 모험바나 파베 가사차 데네 모험바나 안 상계차 뭐 데네기 파베 가사 상계차 파 기능 권조 차고래 상유 권조 차고래 대단 데네기 차베 파베 가사다 상계 디유기 뭐데나 남된디 최권조 다디 디숨데 제비 권조 숨세오래.
Through relying on the Buddha jewel, through relying on the causal three jewels, one trains in the way that they guide us, train in the complete and unmistaken paths that they, or techniques that they guide us in. So this is who we rely on, the causal three jewels. Through relying on them, we will start to transform our mind, develop good qualities within, give rise to the paths, the mental paths of the Dharma, give rise to the path that will eventually lead to enlightenment. And as we progress cultivating these mental paths within, the time will come when we ourselves become an Arya being, when we have those qualities abiding within, when we have the mental paths of an Arya being. At that point, we will have attained the resultant Sangha jewel. Because independence on the causal three jewels, we have given rise to the qualities of the mental path that marks us as an Arya being, a Sangha jewel. And those mental qualities are true paths and true cessations. The cessations of having abandoned afflictions together with their seeds, and the mental paths that led to that. So these are the third and fourth truths. So those true paths and true cessations on our continuum are the resultant Dharma jewel. So independence on relying on the three causal jewels, we train in the way guided, cultivate the ordinary paths, eventually those become the Arya paths. In that moment, we are an Arya being with Arya paths. And those Arya paths are the resultant Dharma jewel on our own continuum, and we become the resultant Sangha jewel, an illustration, an example, a member of the Sangha jewel. And as we continue to develop the Dharma jewel within, eventually we will arise as a Buddha, and we then will have attained the state of the resultant Buddha jewel. So the three resultant jewels come about independent on relying on the three causal jewels.
데네자다 제상한도 코르 동안 타를 껴꾸리에서 이체디 술이체 조 이체데 가르쳐 왔으나 마음바나 소소랑랑 규라 규기 토야게 아니 최고 조텔에 이체 조제래 산요고 최고죠 제상 한도 코르 동안에 그디 타그래람나 소수규라 녀모 바체 사번에 제바 빵배 빵보 고된다 남데니 규를 깨여도 코발에 타와르와 디마게 봐도 산예가지 최셰 숨무den가도 냠내 제베나 디마게 봐도 토에 가서 코발에 타두고 뭐 타고 말와 제사다 겹세디 디리 겹바르다 디리 겹바르스는 다르면이 아주 냠내 제산이 최숨be 갈라 코에 동아 타달 겹바르 지고래 마도 오늘 겹차를 배 차요 말에 기디 사기를나 땅 아주 줄라 냠내 소수게 냠는 제 소수기 단 밥에 가서 차 되네 냠는 제발에 되네 녀모바 사번에 제바 빵요도 코에 동안에 타르와래다 코에 동안에 껴바래고 제사다 되네서 코에 동안에 껴다 동안 타달로 껴간 거네 무슨 왜디 가질리게스네 아주 마홍비게 마홍별 제비 건조 숨들이다 제비 최고조디 제비 최고조디 지산 제비 최고조디가 라는글라 게디 중화나 되네 코에 동안에 껴바래 이 말해 봐도 코에 동안에 껴고 말다 가질래 나 딜레 디 톱도 이시제로와 빼네 디로와 빼는 아주 조도도 빼네 머니 칼라지 다 머니 칼라 요로와다 칼라 신내레 유로와 뭐 머니 칼라 산에 내가 조도와디 강아디 세그리에서 비지제들와다 다 세그리에서 비지제데 미션다에 칼라라 이제나 세트야 말와 로와다 소소게 자에게 칼라사에 톱도 유비 칼라 디산에 세그리 셈비게다 디 이제 소조 지로와다 제가 되는 인상 난 만주게다 접수저의 이지 제세들라 유군조라 군조라 이지 제단 직제 랑기 데뷔 군조의 이지 제단 이지 제단 숨 니도와다 코에 동안에 껴그래서 이지 제단들라 니도와 제가 디나는 조어디다 가르쳐왔으네 랑기 데뷔 최군조디 톱네 강아 세그리 SBC디 다 조어디 자고래 제가 디 조인자 니 토발에 베즈 조어지고 그래서
그래서 양켜주는 청청시 나서 캠조 제주 데니 데도 나서 디 규당제부 니카 캠조 제기야
제가 동어 건조 숨라 건조 숨기 껴그리에서 비삼 이지지거로 와 건조 숨의 껴그리에서 비 건조 숨들라 다 대세니세 유 건조 숨나 데뷔 건조 숨제 다소 니가 이지제 고래제 데 이지 제당대 돼서 가가도 와다 데뷔 건조대 랑 줄라 깨나 다 껴그리에서 비서 유 건조라 니기에 냠는 제발라 라모노에 띵기리에서 이지제야 돼
상기 컨트롤이 걸어서서 되는 겐동 컨트롤, 네 컨트롤 되는 것을 숨어서.
제가 최고조시야만 최고조의 데뷔 컨트롤을 잘 쉐어를 다디. 근데 기존 컨트롤 로모스 제조로와 상기 컨트롤 최 람딩고로와. 근데 상기 국된 되게 갈 재미도 안 되네. 안 줄라. 제가 디 마셔야 되는 마셔. 제가 가스는 데뷔 최고조 바자는 이제 최고조의 장유를 기여도 된 토변도 되네.
최고조 이 곡된
람딘이어와
디 맞소 캠조 원이래 디 숨마서 디 랍나 트리기로 랍거래.
근데 점종원에 들어와 최고조의 장유를 토야게 최고 상유권조 최고 기도죠 숨여래제 데 점종원에 와지 숨디. 디나신다 유 gemne sumadela sangye drupsimbe sangye da pabwe sa konju yu ko de na lamde sumbodi yu chogonjores.
Sorry, sometimes when things are new, I want to make sure I've got it right, because otherwise, for obvious reasons. So, of what will be said now, some will be new. Firstly, so we spoke about the cause and resultant jewels, but just to mention briefly, the Dharma jewel. The Dharma jewel refers to true paths and true cessations in the minds of, if it's in the causal three jewels, it will be the true paths and true cessations that are in the mind of Arya beings, whether it's Arya Buddhas, such as the Buddha jewel, or Sangha jewel. They in their minds have true paths and true cessations. So the Dharma jewel refers to these realizations. So that's in the context of the causal three jewels, and it is the same in terms of the resultant three jewels, but in terms of one's own continuum. So the key point being made here is what the Dharma jewel refers to is not books, it's not teachings, it is the realizations that come about independence on this, independence on the Buddha jewel and the Sangha jewel, which are the realizations of true cessations and true paths. Then, and now this is where some is new. When one goes for refuge, one goes for refuge to both sets of three jewels, both the causal jewels and the resultant three jewels. So we normally will think of the causal three jewels, those which are separate from ourselves. And this is whom we turn to for protecting refuge. But we also turn for protecting refuge to the resultant three jewels, which are to be developed. So again, when we go for refuge, we're going to refuge to both sets of the three jewels, causal and resultant. Causal, external to our continuum. Resultant, what will arise on our continuum. And the reason for this is, of the three jewels, of the three causal jewels, the Buddha is the founder teacher, the Sangha are our companions, the Dharma jewel is the actual refuge, because it is that is the protection from suffering. And of the two types of Dharma jewel, causal and resultant, it is in particular the resultant Dharma jewel that is our protection from suffering. So this word protection, again, is the word for refuge. So protecting refuge or protection, it's the same word. So why do we turn to the three jewels, the causal three jewels, for protection from suffering? Because through their reliance, or through relying on them, we can gain protection from suffering. How so? By developing the Dharma jewel in our own continuum. It is then that we actually have refuge or protection from suffering. It's only when we have developed the Dharma jewel on our own continuum that we can say, I now have protection from suffering, because of the realizations of true paths and true sufferings. So an analogy to make it clear why the actual refuge is the resultant Dharma jewel will be, the analogy would be, if you're hungry and a waiter is bringing your food, that food that is coming to you is where you'll place your trust. And when you receive it, you know by eating it, you'll gain protection from the suffering of hunger. Someone else who's either enjoying their own meal or has eaten their own meal and is therefore full, that is not where you'll place your final trust, because you'll be very happy that they are eating or have eaten, but you are still hungry. You have to eat the food yourself to gain protection from suffering. Similarly, the Dharma jewel that's abiding in the continuum of Buddhas and Arya Buddhas and other Arya practitioners, Arya Bodhisattvas and so forth, that is abiding on their continuum. They have protection from suffering. So we may rely on them as a causal refuge, but we need to give rise to that resultant Dharma jewel within in order to gain our actual protection from suffering. So therefore, in summary, the final sentence, when we go for refuge to both sets of three jewels, but we primarily place our trust in the Dharma jewel that is still to be developed within, because that is our actual refuge, and that when that is developed, we will have actually gained protection from suffering.
당하는 저기 지금 하는 저도 제 강아 시부 최대베이나 다 미니 나로디 파미기 보시나 그 파미기 카라 찌그리 셈비기 이시지어로 받아 이시지 파미칼라 찌그리 셈셈 니니 이시지어로 봐디 파마디다 안주기 때도 유군조 숨세한테 직발해 베스베스나 제상 유군조 숨데 비치 파메기 칼라 찌그리에 셈비 이시지어다 니다 유군조라 산유군조라 겹수 조다로지 가시는 겹을 건주기 로봇 찌그리에 셈비 나데네 파메 칼라 찌그리에 셈비 셈 딩니 이시지어 봐제 데네 파메 칼라 제바나 마사나 조자 강아 조도 강아 세투 말와 제가 디자 파메 칼라 제바데 니 사샤바나 다강아 땡땡 세그리 셈비기 이시지어로다 딩니디 겸조래다 파마라 겹 파미기 강아디 세그 파미 칼라 제그리 셈비 삼로데 이체바데 이시디 다 유군조 산유군조도 기능고 저기 말이야 데니기 강아세야로 제그리 판버 두그리 셈비기 다 유군조 숨에 겹서 좋다디래 다 베니 다데디 칼하디 아메 칼라 제바데 니 사사회 사용도 미 강아디 조도 べ 강아디 세그리에서 비 이시지어로 이시디 소수기 제비군초 마오반다 소수기 상계다 최군초에게 디 미줄에 깨바인다 다 강아 코에둥아 타달데 세그리 셈비기 이시리다 제비군초를 겹수 좋다래 디니디 이시리다 난 이시 인자다 다 디드는 겹수 줘 점줘디래 겹수 줘에 제란 점줘 랍제 랍고 그래서다 제산달라 고인자다 산이마 숭어들파 남된 제발라 장도르체 베네 장도르체네 데네 소소에 냠는 제제 고된 토묘도 데네 초koncho 길이 기고로와 제상 만소면 동알라다 탈베고만 토에다 강알레 세디 모수디 세고로와 당보디 겸르제 이시체 겸르 랍자라 랍제 제부디 토묘도 데네 껴바래 로와디로와 제사다 파미 칼라 제그리 에세비 이시 찍체 칼라데 사능아 강아 로도 강아 세그리 에세비 이시체 다 이시 전에 다 칼라사 파 조고로와 파 조도 당은 좀 점들랍잘 라바다 지바래 파 조제 되는 만에 칼라사제 사이드 갑라 냠는 제바 차고로와 냠는 칼라사 사와다 되는 소소기 동아디게 로도 강아데 세그로와다 되는 소시 차기로 언티나시다 냠는 제네 아니 소소기 귤라 냠는 똑바디 귤레 끼어도 쇼콘주 귤레 끼어도 되는 코와레 코에도 하나 타봐 껴봐 원이디 디차고래
So to explain the way that you should take refuge, starting with the analogy of being hungry, imagine when you're young and you're out playing and you played a lot, burnt up a lot of energy, got starving hungry, and you rush home, open the door and shout out to your parents, I'm starving.
다들 다른 부처 조도디로 당아시 조시고 또 조디 강아데 세고 선비 삼로 쇼로다 디가를 섬은 디산도 네 아미가 칼라 제게에 선비 이치디게 되네 네 칼라 사바는가 조도 강아데 세게에 선비 이치니게 디 잡수 조아디 차래 다 되는 마고 칼라사가 파 주고로 아무들 파 주고로 제 아미절 조 아미 칼라 제 되는 그런 거 세야 고주에디 디 자와체바디다 겸들 랍잘 라비게 냠는 제 고고 차래 다디네 칼라사 사두 강아세디다 소수기 데뷔 초koncho 귤레 깨제 다 타바 가서 코발레 껴바디 원에디 디차고레스 베디디
When you've done with playing because you're overwhelmed by hunger, your mind will turn to where you know that the place abides where freedom from this suffering exists. Your mind will turn to probably your mother, but let's say your parents. You think, I'll run home and thereby I will gain freedom from my suffering. So this is the attitude that turns your mind from the joys and the delights of childhood to the need to overcome suffering. One runs home with this mind of deep faith in your mother, that you know she will protect you from suffering. Throw open the door, declare your need for protection from suffering. This is now like going for refuge. You've turned your mind to the source of protection from suffering, and now you're expressing your refuge prayer, which probably as a child would have been as a demanding food to alleviate your suffering. And then the mother, hopefully with a loving heart, will say, of course, my child, and will either take some pre-prepared food to give to you or heat something up for you. And this is kind of like the teaching being given. And then one gets the meal, and now one is engaging in the training aspect, probably shoving it into your mouth because you're starving hungry. And in this way, now with your suffering of hunger satiated, your faith is strengthened. Your faith, your trust in your mother, your refuge, is strengthened. But eventually, you come to learn how to look after yourself. Independence on your mother, and then perhaps your father and your older siblings. They are your companions who are showing you how to prepare a meal. And then you learn that technique. And now, independence on them, but with a recognition of their role, you can also satiate your own hunger by making a sandwich. So here we see the various qualities of going for refuge. You know, this is where I can gain protection from suffering. And the reason I'm turning to the causal three jewels is for them to guide me. And I do so with the understanding I have to follow that guidance. They're not going to wash away my suffering or remove my pain with their hands. I need to follow their guidance. And by doing so, I will be able to gain complete freedom from suffering. So this then is perhaps a very useful analogy to show how we go to refuge, to the causal jewels, with the understanding I have to apply myself, because it's only through giving rise to the resultant jewels that freedom from suffering will actually be attained.
Gyabtandi samlatadade dona dusre ma do shen manzo o da gyamlo se gonjo de yi ji or gyure se be ji de jinin go ba na ja so so je mo wa che ani ji ya gyobro se be samlatane da di ku gyo ma le che na den gyobure se yi ji je or se be da gyobtang de ga le kare je yi ji je or je tang ga ne ka de che san gyobtang de ne yi ji je tang de ne che na da de ne ki gyobo gyobi ne ga de ne ki le gyobo or se be de tang di 타고나 된 먼저 지나다 점프로 제비게다 지금 고보보게 되바다 삼나다 지금 마인바체 제사다 현라 가상도 되네 주바셔도 현라 되 현기 팔랍 랑기 냠는 제발라 되네 제부 주바셔야 돼 제상 규다 현 되네 주바셔야 돼 최고를 강라 마되바 현지 랑게 강에 마지be 현지기 제네 주되바 마인바체
So I really hope it's clear now how actual practitioners of Buddhism should go for refuge. And it's not necessary that all Buddhists go for refuge like this. Possibly many go for refuge in a way that's not so different from those who believe in a creator God, making supplications and prayers. Please, I've got these problems. Alleviate me of these problems. Give me health and long life and so forth. So this is not the way of an actual practitioner. It's not the way an actual practitioner will go for refuge to the three jewels. So it's really quite different. And so I hope this is very clear, that one is not asking some immensely powerful being to to wash away my suffering, remove your non-virtue with your hands and so forth. This is not how transformation comes. Protection from suffering comes about through the recognition that suffering has come about in dependence on causes. By abandoning those causes and accumulating the causes for happiness, suffering is alleviated and lasting, stable happiness is achieved. So this is something that has come up many times. So the process of dependent arising most explicitly in emptiness, but that would have been reflected on well in the preliminaries, hence the need for preliminaries. So therefore, when you go for refuge with the understanding that you're turning to the three jewels for their the word would be blessing, but the meaning is inspiration to receive those teachings and apply them to one's mind consistently, transformatively.
다들 띵이 또 겸로다 sem게디 거슈체 다디네 순지메 톱세디 다디레 소수기 냐마 노르지 디바체디기 바 제hen제 오다 디민도 스메데디 노르 중샤 디 디민도 셈베기 조바스티에디다 순지메 톱시고레.
Just to remind you, we are in the context of looking at the four opponent powers in the context of purification of non-virtue. So that was in the first, the power of reliance. One relies on the three jewels in this way. A second, of the four opponent powers, the second we'll look at is that of regret. Regret for past non-virtue. Calling a non-virtue to mind, which is the cause, that leads to suffering. Regret then arises because one does not want to suffer.
안주 가래나 지금에마 노르 통데 지미도 삼바이나 삼다베나 모바나 노르데 마셔야래야 차바시우예들 봐. 배는 아주 야직 잘할 강바를 직직 sögö다지 어디 sögö 니를 sögö다 어디미도 삼다베나 노르지 마하고나 디야게 sögö다요 봐. 다 먹어나 노르이 마하 먹어나 안에 모바나 노르 야게 쇼야 이니가 요래 안 죄사교데 노르이 마하 먹어나 안 다가라 샤진데 아니 야 약쇼체기 메가 차르고로 제사딘 생아주 제 레가를 가르 제베네 지 예마 레가 제베네 노르 쇼교나 모바나 디 노르데 마셔야기 캬바체 안에 지 소교다 야게 소교다 지 야게 어디 노르샤디 디레면 테니스 조고도 하신베게 따다 쇠게 소교다에 캬바인 거. 제가 니네 사다 녀마 마디바 노르체디 파텐 디바체바 텐지네 교바케야디기 김센데르 교바케와디 김센데르 순지메 톱세디.
So regret is an indispensable opponent power, because if one hasn't generated regret, one will continue to act in the same way. If one does not recognize faulty behavior as that, one will continue to do it. And if one's recognition of harmful behavior as harmful is merely intellectual, you've learned the 10 non-virtues, you know what there are, but you keep doing them, this shows you haven't really recognized that fault as a fault, that misdeed as a misdeed. That recognition is merely intellectual. So therefore, one needs to generate actual regret, where one regrets what one has done, because you see, this causes harm. Whether harm arose immediately or not, you know it will follow. So one needs to have this mind of regret, otherwise behavior won't change. And then engaging in purification is just a recitation of sound. That does not lead to the transformation of one's mind.
네발랄 도비 톱세디 네마 노르 제바데 통진이 교바케바 인자 다 네발랄 도비 톱세 다 친진의 마음반에 싸우기니 지금에 세메 킬린 담자시에들이.
Leading from the power of regret comes the power of restraint, because if regret has genuinely been cultivated, this power of restraint will follow naturally. The restraint is, I will not do this again. I've made my mistakes, that's over now.
나 되네게 전에 다지 노트 띵이 톱 겸로 심게체 되네 냐르 디버체바디게 노트이 마통 드미는 심베 겨바게 되네 안 마음반에 싸워있는 친친 싸워있는 지금에 셈베게 담자 켈렌제 되네 자당이 디버사샤바데다 디링 안에 샤긴 셈베게 삼다체 되네 디버샤게 돈달이야 안은 주게 지게 제 배배시 동화샤바게 동화샤바 뒤엔체네 동화샤바 라숨주 소강하게 배제 뒤엔 라숨주 소강을 쇠립체네 동샤 뒤엔체네 디바샤나 뒤엔체 두체 동샤 뒤바 용거래 근데 차체와 용거래 근데 만제푸와 용거래 안데네게 안데 잠니 조금마다 내 동요 공바 용거와 어디니고 돈바체베디 다 디니기 삼다 디바샤에게 더 디링이 디바 마션 타면 냐마제와 디바샤기 삼제 디니기 제지도 라마리아 소와 지 소와 제지도 대체 안내양 지금 도시 동반이 고미하다 안내 지게 동화샤바 뒤엔제 다 숨지 송알이야 소대지 도시 동아 샤바 되야 라소바다 데네 나네 차세야 꼬라꼬라다 데네게 이게사야 어와데네 안에 메네사야 데네 가는 차상다 님복군도 주에 또 그래 가지 개와 두베디 데네 개와 두요디 냐마 제시 디바데 샤고르다 님복군도 주에 또 없어야 되시고다
The four opponent powers, because we're in of the four practices, the best of methods is possessing the four practices. The first was accumulation of merit, the second is purification of negativities. This requires these four opponent powers. So I spoke about three. The power of reliance, which is that of refuge and bodhicitta, the power of regret, then the power of restraint, or making the promise, the commitment, and now the fourth, the power of the antidote. So an antidote is usually a contrary mind, a mind that is contrary or opposing whatever one is confessing, the non-virtuous mind. But here what's important to recognize, that this antidotal power is any virtuous mind. What virtuous activity you choose to engage in is up to you. May well feel most appropriate to engage in a virtuous activity directly opposed to what you have generated regret and restraint in relation to. So therefore, depending, it could be meditating on love or meditating on compassion as an antidote to, let's say, anger. But it doesn't necessarily have to be that. It could be something more, a general antidote. For example, reciting the names of the 35 confession Buddhas, or engaging in prostrations, or making offerings, such as mandala offerings, or maybe doing circumambulation. These are all a variety of virtuous practices that you can use as an antidote, because again, any virtuous practice will do. Some choose to recite mantras, such as the Vajrasattva 100-syllable mantra. And again, others may choose to engage in meditation on any virtuous mind. So I've mentioned love and compassion. One can also meditate on the wisdom realizing emptiness. So, in brief, the power of the antidote can be any virtuous mind. So the four, returning to the text, the best of methods is possessing the four practices. So the first is accumulation of merit, second purification of negativities, now the third, offering tormas to spirits.
Hadela soba dine yungura neba chikensela duensi or dangajel duensi. And desolia and cheva joas didn't cheva sonshare. That don't la cosia dormare side deshe and dormachi do stay. And the day and the Karsha or the Kurangi Dushine Malia and the Ni Chuba la Parsia Majiroshes. Parsia Majes and the Niki Malia Dusika Mate and Churubale Parsia Majes on to Ladida, Denis, some died. Duida, Nekap Kanishina, Ningalia, Parsia Majing, Kuralia, the Dorma Dusus, Kura Dadi, me Kura Pember, Kuralia, Niamnaja, Parsia Majes said.
So the third one, offering tormas to spirits. Here, this word spirits, understand it as more broadly, but any non-human being who can make obstacles in one's Dharma practice. So this may well be spirits, it could be some in the God realms, but those non-human beings who can make obstacles in one's Dharma practice. Here, one offers torma with the request, please no longer make obstacles in my Dharma practice. Or if you haven't yet and you're thinking of it, please do not. So the purpose is to, in dependence on making offerings to unseen beings who may create obstacles, please, in dependence on this offering, do not.
Jimbam, Jeba said it. That in that Javanala me, Donla, and the Cheva, Jimba, Dorma, Cheva Pua, Cheva Pua said the Gugore. That he going to get Yamlin, JB, Rimba, the Tuni, so you do Jidang and Juma, Jala, Milia, Kalado, Karajebene, Shesi Machina, Jeba, Sigura, Shesushina Pua, Sigore. That he going to Pua. That Shesu Pu City, Jessidu, Randa, Janyam. And then she ran Lama, Pate, Delia, Jevas, Chisona, Jinga to Chitimban, Pishitan, the Jevas, Pistan. The poor loved to run to a scamba, the Yundan Chawada, one toy against the Jeva Dilla, poor in the Sheshu, or what I Chidang to Chitin and Geshetala. The Geshe ne Garshos and the Chidena, and the Chitina Geshe Jeba said, and poor said the Geshe was it. Chesna Jeva said the Chidang Rangi Machi, the Chichala Jedu, Garjevan Jedu, Rangi, Rangle dus Mawatang, Randa Nyambalaya, to say Shesamashu, Jevas and 60 Jevas and Pishitango Regere. Chesna Rangle dus Yundan Chewa, Gone Chewa, Rangle Gambaruja, Denisilia Jevina, and the Jeva Malachi Puas and Pishitan 60 Pishitango Res, Chesna Jikti Yara Shesa, the Jikti, and then at Namudi and Chike, Shesa member the Cheguro, Chida, and the Chitin Bay Javan Pishitan.
In different contexts, we use different words with this, but having the same meaning. So here, as a translator, I'm using the word offering tormas. So Geshe is not talking necessarily about this, but just talking about use of language. So there's the word to offer, and there's the word to give. So whilst the meaning is the same, in society, one uses the words differently. So generally, one will use, in accordance with social customs, the word offering to someone that you are showing respect to. So in most cultures, although there's variety, one will show respect to those who have great qualities, or those who have the quality of age, and therefore one shows respect to those who have the wisdom that comes with age. So there's this generally when a word like offer would be used, and otherwise to those of one's standing, or those perhaps younger, like children, one would say, I give, as opposed to I offer.
Chebo said 60 pages done gore. Chebo said, Peshitadi, Nan Gavigi, Gavo Drubitan, Jehovah, you think. Chebo said, Chesnata Cheba, Sosuki, Sonam Sasa, Gava Sasaki, Uchila, Ben Yamlin J, Chugin Yamlin J, Gansata, Lama, Concho, Denigi, Jelia, and Nanzuki, Jik, Jorova, Dele Pua, Cheba Pua, said Cheba Pua, and that's 60, that Dele does towards based on Cheba Pua, said Chesna that Cheba Pula you do, then Suzuki and Cheba Pussy Yudi, giving Yamlin J to can, another Gavasa Yudi can usually a Pua do, Cheba Pua, said based on Gore. Sina Pulua based on Gore, Cheba Pua, based on Goman's Cheba Puas, but the Dele Jebas based on Gomare. Chesna Daddy does Gushep Chimbutone, the Nigi Pumpiniana. Chedin the Chow Puya, Chedin de la Din Pudu, Sosola Gawa give us our said. Gulia Puyodu, good the Pubi again, just Sosola Gawasa gods. Chesan Gawasa usually are Puya de la, and then Chow Puas based on Gore.
And then there's a third word, which in English will sometimes be translated as offering. And this is, so here I'll say the Tibetan, it's chirpa. So where you know this word, and it's a word that comes up a lot in the Dharma, is from Lama chirpa. So in English we say Guru Puja, but or offerings to the Lama. So here, Lama chirpa. So this word, chirpa. So this can and often is translated as offering. When this particular term, chirpa, is used, is in relation to in the context of the accumulation of merit, in relation to those who have qualities that surpass oneself. So, offerings to the Lama, Lama Chopa, or offerings to the three jewels. So this word is used in the context of the creation of merit, and it's is done in relation to those with higher qualities of yourself. It can be used together with one of the other words for offering, those like to people who are your elders and so forth, that politer word, and then it will be chopa pul, and then this will be very clearly about making offerings, as opposed to another meaning and therefore translation.
Didi yore che puya dila ze jala puya yore, hingdo puya yore, kala puya yore, medo puya yore, desu ze puya roa, chebe ze puya de, chebe ze dila, ane denigi ngosu, denigi zik puya yorwa, an di membige da sik nyembu duen chene, ane ngagi chebo puya yorwa, ane shabro tabje joye chebo puya yorwa, ane lugi cheba, ngagi cheba, yigi cheba, samli thoneran samli yi cheba la de yi cheba ane nga zoge sajibu gi ju hime do dan se puyo de yi cheba chego ga se yi yu kone je punsu sobo zhui xin samla da ji puyo ro se de ni ge cheo puye de le de ne yo na so ngu ro yi chego puye je chego ro che chego puye de le ya gar gar yo re se ne.
So this word chopa is used in a dharma context. But the meaning, and this is where the challenge is for the translator, hence we had this discussion many times, including earlier. So this word chopa refers to, especially with this, the chopa pul, the pul is when you're offering to your elders, and it's a lower, a regular honorific word, but in relation to those senior to you, so like one's elders. But in the Dharma context, it'll be chopa. When it's chopa pul, it's very clear. You're offering a material substance. So one may be offering a mandala or making a material offering such as that. But it's where it mostly is used without that second word, the pul. So just chopa. There it can still mean offering something material, which is this English word, then we translate it as the English word offering. But it can also mean making a verbal offering or the offering made mentally. And there it would be often translated as respect or salutation or homage. So wherever you see those words, it is the same word for offering, but in the Dharma context. But there the translator is recognizing that probably it's not a material offering, but it's either through recitation of verse or through the joining of hands and I pay homage to whatever. And in this way, it's more likely to be a verbal or a mental act. And then the word homage or salutation or veneration is used.
Dön le cheba la dön le cheba puya se dön se ran ne ji han de ne ge mi ma yin ba de ne dön de ri li ya ne ba ji de le dön de le ya ji cheba puya se na ji da ne mi ne de le dön le to ma jin ba se ma de cheba puya se de bi sta ma jin ba se de je ba se ka se ne mi ma yin dön ri ji ti ting yi chan ne nga mi di ting yi chan ne mi di nga zu ge 야가 지고로와 지금 땡기 전에 콘도스 멤버를 차고 지금 홀에 진세대 제마도 시스 쉬야대 차고 말에 또마 진바세 올 진바세 비슷한 게 제바세야 돼.
And I just forgot to mention in the earlier segment another illustration of making offerings in the Dharma context would be the offering of dance. So you can think of Lama dance and so forth. This is also this word, chopa. So there that is another material offering that can be made. And here, though, to go back to the text, because we're in the point of offering tormas to spirits, there the better translation would be giving tormas to spirits, because even where the word that is used is the same as to one's elders, that pul, it's the meaning really is those who are not of one's status, one's standing, but to beings who are of a lower standing. Because whatever realm they're in, they may be gods, probably spirits, they are, the relationship is, or the request is, please do not harm me. So therefore, it would be best to say, giving tormas to spirits.
Dadi kapso manzu delia dunla turma chöba sayaji labgo de nyamne na tiyo tone bishitangore turma chöba sayadi. Nami jidane bishitandi turma jimba se bishitaji. Dadi dinala tewe nala turma chöba sayore. Chisa yoba nza diniki chöba sayadi nyamne na tiyo tone bishitangore. Dunla turma chöba siduwa di tsi tewa na. Chisa namyun jidane dunla jimba se madu chöba lagyo ma rejere. 다들 디나데 디디 냠내니 값을 시에도 갑라 냠내나 전에 시에도 덜 쳐봐서 자디 시에디 송야디다 냠내나 뒤에 돈에 숨고래지래.
In this particular context of this text, the word that is used for offerings to spirits is actually the Dharma word, because the chöpa, because of being in the context of accumulating, of being in a context of a Dharma practice. So here actually the word that's being used is chöpa, but generally one would use the word chö, which is just to give. So you want to give tormas to spirits. So then my translation, offering tormas to spirits is fine.
제산 된세의 소소를 네버기를 가상한도 시에 나신다 주반에 소소를 네버기와 인자 소소를 강한 제연도 델라미네 잠니지게다 배 잠니지게 고급라와 델라디는 쇠복 고고 냠내로 제상에 잠니지 냠내 제다 쇠배 냠내 제디 된 디수기 대께진에 되네 나래 잠니지 고미하다 쇠배 냠내 뱀바세 깨진 첨보래 제산 다행한저 라마 나시래 삼다도 제사다 되네도 되네 그런 첨보래 제상에다 결혼을 또마디 파 최세 결혼을 최세야지 직디단 거다 또마 진바데 돼야지 되네 최세야지 그래서네 딘 첨보 그린 첨보 라마다 상예 나시래 삼백이 딘 덴비 토네 아니 제반자 최세 직디비다 디다다 최세야지 아니 대자 되니기 대 최네 야, 미 냠는 제발이야. 발세 맞으러시 해서지. 식디 최세 비슷한 거 김전디 디레다 디레 가라하고 그러서는 최세 디기 돈다디기 가라하고 그러서 배될 때네 저 된될 때네 잠바다 인지기 쇠보 고메 그 고급 냠는 배가 상기 고바 토와야 타르니르다야 잠니제게 고급라 쇠베 냠는 제바 디니기 계획 풍송소 소 자침보 소여 바디 라와디 된이 깨진 스페마스 깨진 첨부인 상계다 라마다 깨진 직바인 셈에 삼당여도 디기 토네다 되니게 깨진 삼당에 토네 인자 걸 최세디 직디비시 당하리마도 현지단에 최락마다.
So first, just to say as a translator, if you're wondering why you're getting all of this, now what Geshe has just said, really make some sense. And also to say, and you couldn't get this from a book, from a written translation, because how do you translate this? But from an oral teaching, you can. So now what Geshe just said. So in this context, the Dharma word, chöpa, is used to make offerings then to spirits, or to unseen beings would be best. Unseen beings, because it can include gods, who have the potential to cause obstacles, harm in one's Dharma practice. So why is this word being used? So in Tibetan, one would read this word, recognize it's chöpa, and therefore meaning would come to mind. That just from the word offering will not come. So the meaning, by reading this text in Tibetan, reading the word chöpa, the meaning that comes to mind is, this is in a Dharma context. The way I am supposed to relate to these beings who really are, in terms of hierarchy, lower than me, because they are beings that cause harm, I should be relating to them with respect that is similar to how I relate to my lamas, how I relate to the Buddhas, how I relate to the Bodhisattvas. So therefore, when I'm expressing, this offering is for you, harm doers, please do not please do not express your distaste of my practice by creating obstacles. I appreciate that you do not agree or like what I'm doing, and therefore you may want to act in a particular way, but know that I appreciate you, I respect you, because I know that you think what you are doing will bring you happiness, but my request is, please don't. So here one is expressing the minds of love and compassion that you have cultivated for all beings, and you are making an offering to them with such a warm, a tender attitude, not one of, don't hurt me, go away, but one of, I value you, you matter to me. So in this way, one relates to them with care and kindness and appreciation, like one does for one's Lama and to the Buddhas and to the Bodhisattvas.
anda dene chögyang la dharma chöba se da chögyang la dharma chöba de ji de yore karsan chögyang se de nga ji ge chöba la ane ji ba she se da ane tingyen chöba che be ge sanje ye ka sujin du de gen gi da dene ge ane nga zo chögyang de chögyang se di nga ji ge chö nyemne che ba la ba che de ge yong ye sung ya da tingyen du ge ro che gen de so sanje ge ka sujin du de gen and Sanji got some banaching yamne jet you can check Chagorwa chicken. This will let them a chop as you were. Chesada Sangi marriage, chicken, let the Sumaroa, Gombo, Suma, Jesan country, Carchigors, and the Chi Jagalia, Bache de Sunya down, Rutingin de Robotia, and the Sangi Banachin to be a cross and Yamne Chigio Baza, that consul chop us in the Jigordoma chopa. Another consul cheba dorma puicene, dorma cheba, dorma puicene, and the garjiorsene, and then a churubala, Bachi de Yomba, and the Bachi de Passeros, send the Bachi member Soroche, and then a churubay in Yamlin, Jevalia, Tungin, Chinang, Tungin Kariob, and Tungin de Yahu, Yonga, and the Kurama Duchin, Cheroches, and Robocheroches, and Duchin, and Pa, Dajir, Duchin, Robocheroches, and Duchin, so the Labche, and Cheba and Didonala, Cheba the Pugius, Dorma Pugius, a bit in Jerida.
The fourth of the four practices is making offerings to Dharma protectors. Dharma protectors are those, and these are non-Buddhas, but those who have promised the Buddhas to act in accordance with the wishes of the Buddhas, in particular to assist those who are with sincerity engaging in Dharma practice, assist them to overcome obstacles and problems. So here one offers them Toma with a request, please provide this assistance. So we make requests to them with our offering of Toma. So that's the fourth of the four practices. All right, then we can conclude there for this morning. Thank you. Is there a question somewhere?
I did have one question, sorry,
sure.
It's regarding emptiness. If the world doesn't exist in the way that it appears to us, as existing from its own side, the world or objects, then how would you best describe how it does truly exist?
So the way phenomena, the world as well as inhabitants, do not exist is by way of their own nature, which is how they appear, that they appear as real or true. So, but they do exist. How do they exist? As dependent arisings, in particular in dependence on imputation by mind. So this, what it means is they do not exist in the way they appear, but they do exist in a way they do not appear. The way they exist in dependence on labeling. So to recognize this, one first needs to see how they appear to mind, that first step in the meditation. Then you can come to know how they do not exist. And then one can it will make sense then how they must exist. So if we think of a car, the way the car appears to the mind, so in the meditation, this is that first step, the way that it appears to the mind is truly existent. But when we look for this truly existent car within there, we do not find it. So it doesn't exist. It's empty of existing in the way it appears to our mind. But it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. How does it exist? Independent on a wide number of causes and parts coming together and labeling by mind. So all the parts are required. The causes for those parts are required and labeling by mind. This is how it does exist. So a car does exist, but the way it appears to our mind is that it is independent, which means it appears as if it's independent of causes, independent of parts. It doesn't require them. It doesn't require labeling. It doesn't require any of that. But in reality, it does.
Okay. Andy.
Andy?
Okay, so what sort of beings are these Dharma protectors? Are they spirits or which realms?
So the Dharma protectors here, non-Buddhas, in the realms, where do they exist? Are they spirits? Are they gods? Yeah.
Dela ida mare dade choson labne jigi jigdimbe ge pabe kansa yungure ngo sanje imbala namba ane je ma sosi denigi namba ba yungure ndi membe ge da jidane dade di jidimba lamgula ma jawa de yungure ma de ida da dinu yomare
La, Mark, you can? La. La yana.
So, did it is a
Sanki Kichua?
did it? I'm not allowed to see or allowed to love or daddy. I love the Digor, Yamaram Digor.
So, Dharma protectors, broad category. Some will be emanations of Buddhas, some will be Arya Bodhisattvas, others will be those who haven't attained a path at all, and they would be found amongst the gods.